Okay, it seems like we have everyone with us now. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Library Committee meeting on February 25th, 2025. Before we begin, I would like to provide a special welcome to all of our new members who are our community representatives appointed by each of the townships. We are excited that you are all here today joining us, and we also have one who's joining us virtually. And we look forward to having you on our board or on our committee for the next 2 years. I will now call on Julie Hale, our committee clerk, to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Regional Chair Redmond.
Pardon?
Are you here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Member Grant.
Here.
Member Griffiths.
Here.
Member Martin.
Here.
Councillor Nowak.
I'm here.
Member Palmer.
Here.
Chair Salonen.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
I would like to acknowledge the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Shinaatin people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will jump into our reports. I will call on Christina McLaren, our Manager of Library Services, to introduce our first report, and Julian Kingston, the Director of Cultural Services, is also available for questions.
Good morning and thank you. So the update on the analysis of library governance report. At the October 2024 meeting, Library Committee made a motion for staff to provide a report on the potential costs and benefits of transferring the region of Waterloo Library branches to the respective townships. And they also asked that township staff be consulted in the evaluation process. This report is an update on that work so far. We are presenting a timeline for the work and consultation process with township staff. I won't go into the details of that, but it's all laid out in the report. From October to June 3rd, when we anticipate having the report completed. Costing details have been requested from regional supports, as well as through library vendors and partnership groups. We are looking at financial services, facilities and maintenance, information and technology services, labor relations and potential severance costs, human resources, legal services, materials, and digital collections. An analysis of the data gathered will take place over the next couple of months through March and April. We'll be looking at the costs of operations, requirements of any potential transfers of services, legal requirements around staffing and service contracts, legislative requirements, responsibilities required of a new library board, and financial impacts to both the region and the townships. We have met regularly with township staff over the last 2 months to keep them apprised of the progress on this work so far, and we'll continue to do that throughout this process.
Thank you very much. Just so that everyone's aware, mainly this is for regional councillors, you can use eScribe, but also we are going to be using our hands if you want to get in the queue because our community members do not have access to eScribe. So that is a slight change for us, but we will go to Councillor Foxton for questions first.
Thank you. So I'm a little confused, and I'll tell you why. I met with my CAO yesterday, who was quite angry. I guess there was supposed to be a meeting on Friday to discuss exactly what you just stated. And he was told, I believe the CEOs were told, never mind, it's not going to happen because we've changed it. And then I've got the document that you presented to them with the changes and not following the direction that we had given you. David, could you maybe come to the mic and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm, sorry, David, to pull you in this, or actually I'm not. What we want to be very clear is we want to know exactly how the library is running costs because everything is paid for by the townships. Not a penny goes of regional money into anything that the library said. We own the buildings. Now I'm going to go back a bit. KPMG about 12 years ago did a report to the region, and I believe most of the councillors here were here at that time as well as Chair Redmond. And they said that we were trying to scale back on the different things the region did. And one of their suggestions was they should release the libraries. And township townships basically agreed with that. Now, then KPMG a few years back, how long, Karen? Do you remember what year it was? Was it 4 or 6 years ago?
Maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah. We had them come in again. The townships have been given a grant to do an analysis on things. And KPMG came with a report, and the report was exactly the opposite of the previous KPMG report, stating that the township should hand over to the region our $1 million buildings. Now, our building in North Dumfries is probably worth about $6 million at today's market, and just be done with handing it to the region. So we were not pleased with that. Then KPMG told our CAOs that they couldn't get the correct information from the region, that it wasn't released to them, and this is the only thing that they had. So then the meeting, we've moved forward, and we've said we want the scenario on what it would look like if we would take the libraries on ourselves, what it would cost, because we pay for everything right now. And we don't really know the breakdown of what we pay for, and that's why we're looking into different situations, which is another motion we'll get to later. So David, have I got it pretty accurate, or can you be more wholesome and you can shoot me down. Go ahead, David.
CAO Brenneman.
You're muted.
Thanks, Joe. Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee. One thing I do need to correct. There wasn't a meeting that was supposed to be arranged for last week that was canceled. For the record, the only thing that changed within the last couple of weeks was different versions of the staff report that we were reviewing. And some of my CAO colleagues, in light of that, said that they didn't need to attend this meeting because really there wasn't anything that they felt that needed to be contributed based on the content in the staff report. But I would say this, I think the only thing that we were ever looking for through the committee and the region library staff has been, what exactly will we be examining? Because there's different ways to approach this. As the township mayors, I'll say it that way, would have known in the past. We have considered about doing some sort of terms of reference to do a business assessment, a business case analysis on the feasibility of the townships, not only taking on the facilities that we already do, but also the operating side of the equation. But really, when we came together a number of weeks ago, and we're starting to review various reports. Again, it was all with the idea of making sure that we were all on the same page in terms of what we were going to do to meet the library committee's expectations, right? And did we all have a clear understanding of what those expectations are? And that's why actually I still decided to attend today, because I wanted to hear firsthand and get a good understanding of the path forward, as the library committee direction would see fit, to do the appropriate analysis, because it is true and it is correct. As township mayors and as township CAOs, we've talked about looking at an option in terms of the township taking over responsibility. But we also know that there has been, talk before as well that does there need to be a more fulsome analysis? I would compare it to this. Sometimes municipalities have to go through an environmental assessment process, right? And you evaluate the status quo, you evaluate various options that you go through. So I think where I want to conclude is that I think the most important thing coming out of today is what is the committee's expectations? What is it expected that regional staff working with township staff needs to deliver on. I think that's the ultimate thing, Councillor or Mayor Foxton, that we certainly would love to get some clarity on, because clarity will be important if we're going to be able to deliver on meeting the committee's expectations. So that's what I can add. But yeah, there was no there was no expectation of a meeting last week. It was just some people decided, well, okay, there's been different versions of the report, so they weren't going to come to the meeting. But as I said, I wanted to attend because I'd like to hear what the path forward is.
Thank you very much. Councillor Foxton, did you have a follow-up as you're staring at me? Because we do still have other speakers in the queue.
Yeah, I'm just, thanks, David, for the clarity, but I think we need to be crystal clear. We are looking for, if you were going to put it into a sentence, David, how would you sentence it?
So if I was to put it in a sentence or sentences, I would say, is it the committee's wishes that we look at, a terms of reference for just the feasibility regarding, the township being responsible for both the operations and the facilities, or do you want to go through an analysis whereby you're evaluating all of the options, again, in terms of feasibility, as I said earlier, akin to an environmental assessment process where you're evaluating the status quo and any other option that you think ultimately will help make an informed decision on it. So that's been my perspective from the outset, that whether we're sitting in these council chambers, as the Regional Library Committee, or any of the talks that I know that we've had with the township mayors, to me it's always been about the fact that I think the only and best way to make an informed decision is to make sure we're doing a proper terms of reference, business case analysis. But again, as I said, is that on one option, or is that on a multitude of options comparable to like an environmental assessment process where you evaluate a multitude of options? So that's what I would say.
And I was under the understanding, and my counterparts will correct me, that we were looking at the one option on the feasibility and the costs of the process of private township ownership. Thank you.
I will go over to Commissioner Regier.
Thank you, Chair. I think that we're very much on the same page as the CAOs on this. The one, and I will say that it was really the shift in the direction of the report was really my responsibility, in the sense that the CAOs, if I understood them correctly, wanted to clarify whether or not the only option was on the table was the transfer of the libraries to the respective townships, which is what was written in the resolution, or whether or not the committee wished to look at all the potential options, which would include, for example, the formation of or keeping the library system intact, and then having a separate board with the operations being similar to some other county libraries that you see commonly across the province. So I think that if I'm not mistaken, David, there was an intent to make sure that option of maintaining the efficiencies of the organization as it's currently configured was at least considered in the process. And I guess my view of the process was that we could do both. Like, it wouldn't be difficult to evaluate the status quo against dispersing the operation to each respective township versus keeping the organization basically intact, but transferring responsibilities entirely to some sort of governance model, which would be which would be led by the townships in a combined fashion, right? So, am Does that resonate with you, David? I apologize. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm happy that you decided to show up today, Mr. Brenneman. I'm not certain you feel the same way, but please go ahead.
Every day's a challenge. I'll take that under advisement. So I guess the one thing that I did forget to mention, Rod, that you have provided clarity on is, yeah, I think one of the struggling points when we first met a number of weeks ago was having the understanding that regional staff had understanding that one of the things to ultimately look at and the direction provided by the committee was perhaps 4 separate library boards in 4 separate townships and that sort of thing, and that actually didn't sit in our recollection as township CAOs simply because that's not what's happened at the quarterly meetings that we have with the township mayors. And so, yeah, that was one of the other things, at our meetings, you're right, Rod, that led to the fact that maybe, just maybe, at the next library committee meeting, it would be good to get some clarity around, again, what the expectations are. And I think that's always important, right? Whether I'm at my township council meeting or I'm standing in front of you right now is that I just want absolute clarity on what the expectations are, what the parameters are, and then ultimately you can, build the terms of reference and a business case analysis on meeting those expectations. So again, not even in a sentence, I would say while I'm up here, in one word, I think the importance of today was to provide absolute clarity on what's expected of region and township staff as we navigate and help you make an informed decision.
Okay. Are you good, Commissioner Regier? All right. I will go over to Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I'm not sure where the single boards for individual townships came from. That was never on my radar, and I don't think it was on my colleagues' radar either. It was always, we've got a board. Right now, the board is the regional council, really is the board. We're just a committee. And it's a standalone unit, basically, with our taxes being paid directly to the library board. So for me, what I was looking for was give me a breakdown of the expenses. Like, I know that you have a system that you can go in and you can pull out expenses and pull it out in detail, and you can run that report. And it wasn't to be a 6-month event to get a report. It was to get some information so that we can make an informed decision on where we want to go from here. So I guess I'm a little bit confused why there's confusion.
Just before we go back to second round, is there anybody else who hasn't spoken yet that would like to chime in? Oh, yes. Go to you, Councillor Nowak.
No, when I read the report, I thought the items that they listed for review were exactly what we were looking for. And I'm not sure why. I'm a little bit confused now why there is it. Like Sandy, I'm confused why there's any confusion. I think when when that report comes back to council or to the library committee, we'll probably have a better idea exactly what the financial implications are, and what the challenges are. So I'm looking forward to that meeting, and this was just for information, and I'm not sure why we're overly excited about the direction that's been taken. My thoughts. Or concerned. Excited maybe is the wrong word. Concerned.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else before I go for second round? Okay, we will start with our second round, then we'll go back to Councillor Foxton.
Joe, just to clarify, I've had a document that was given from the regional library staff to our CAOs and the different changes, and maybe it's something all the mayors should have, and I'll try and get that around to you. As I understood it, and I think a lot of us understood it, was we were asking for the exact costs of what it is to run the libraries. We know we pay it. We know that the staff are in charge of it. We don't really see it. We don't get to see the breakdown. What are the assets and how do they fall? An example is headquarters. It's a debt that the library took on that we've paid for, that we own the building, but the land resides within the region. How does that work out? Should we become standalone libraries? And as you should note also, the CAOs and mayors of the township meet regularly. We discuss multiple issues, procurement and everything else. And so working collaboratively with the libraries as we have self-ownership would be just fall under that same umbrella. Now, so what was supposed to happen was that the first 50% of the process was to be the information from the staff. And then the second half was to that information would go to our CAOs, they would analyze it, and they would present it to all of us. And then we would work out how we would like to proceed, if we would like to proceed. But we can't go anywhere until we have the fulsome information, which we don't really have. And another motion will come forward in this meeting relating back to how misguided some of that information has been. So we want to make it very clear, and I need my counterparts to confirm that we wanted the information on what it costs to run the library system completely, right down to the nuts and bolts, the dollar figures. That's what we've requested for. And then once we have that, our CAOs want to get together and analyze it and see how it can work and make, again, an analysis on that. That's the clarification I'm hoping to make today. I want to be crystal clear. I want to do status quo and have you analyze status quo. That's something that can be done a year from now or whatever if we stay as this group. There's no hurry for that because we already have status quo. This is a different option. So that's what we want, point blank. With the realization that we're one of the only municipalities that give the libraries to the region, that have the libraries run by the region. All the rest of the libraries stay at the municipal level. The Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Minister of Cultural Services was shocked that our libraries are run under the region. Be it what it was or what it is, we want this process to go through with a complete and true analysis of every single item that is funded and paid for by the townships. And if there is any interference with the region, as in they've put money in, I want to hear about that, but I don't believe we've ever been told the region has ever put a penny in. It is all of ours. Thank you.
So Councillor Foxton, I'd maybe suggest that you consider a motion because right now it is just to receive for information. So if you would like staff to have that direction, we have a few other speakers, but if you want to maybe write something together or connect with our committee clerk, then we can get something up for that. I do have actually Chair Redmond next.
Thank you very much, Chair Salonen. I guess I would say that I actually heard Councillor Foxton saying a couple of things, and it seems quite clear to me that really what this request is all the operational costs that go into the library system as a system, so all 4 townships' libraries, what it costs to run them. But I also heard Councillor Foxton opining, I think, on what our relationship might be, being the region owns the land, but the townships own the facilities. And to me, that's a complicating factor that maybe needs to have a conversation down the road. So I was actually hearing 2 things, and I think getting the data for operating the system as it stands now and as a unit, I think that provides clarity as we go forward. And then the relationship between who owns the building and who owns the land probably is a little bit more complicated and can be part of maybe a second conversation or a second report.
Okay. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. A couple of things. I think, Sue, when you're putting together your motion, I'm not sure we need to wait till June 3rd to get those numbers. So if you can put a date that's a little more reasonable on that. I think there's a progress report for April 1st. I would like to see a final report, like, given that this, and Mr. Commissioner Steffler, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how you get information, because I'm sure that you can analyze financial information in a lot more detail than we ever see. So what is available easily for you to provide?
Through the chair. So I'm not completely familiar with all the details, but what I know I could access would be like the P&L, profit and loss statements type thing. We can do reports on that. Some of the, I don't believe we do like a separate balance sheet for the libraries, so we'd have to probably go through, if we wanted to look at that detail, we'd have to do a bit more work to go through and identify the specific assets and create a balance sheet. But the revenue expenditures, I think we could pull together in a reasonably quick fashion.
I'd be interested in the details, more like maybe a trial balance kind of breakdown as opposed to just a balance sheet, because those are pretty broad.
Yeah, through the chair. So trial balance, that includes balance, it includes assets and liabilities, balance sheet plus revenues and expenses. And so I'm not I don't believe we run a separate trial balance for the library committee. We run it in that sense, like a department. We'd have the revenues and expenditures. The assets would be identified within the assets and liabilities. We'd have to do more work to create a separate balance sheet if that was the wish of the committee.
You could then, if you've got those figures, you could certainly provide us detail on income and expenses.
Yeah, through the chair. So we can provide the accounts and the balances in the accounts. We could also give the general ledger detail, the very specific transactions, if that was also of interest. But we'd have I'd start with the account level totals.
Okay, I think that would be good. I guess I'd have to see it before I know exactly what's included there. The other piece about the building and land, all of our branches are fully owned by the townships, land and building. It's just the admin building that Sue was talking about, where I believe the library owns the building, but the region owns the land. So it's just that one building, just for clarity.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions before I turn it back to Councillor Foxton? Yes.
Hi. Apologies in advance if this is an incredibly naive question, but I'm looking at the agenda on page 3, where there's a bullet point of some aspects of library operations. Could that financial, and again, I'm here for the first time, so apologies, but it seems to me that the items in that bullet list would be nice to have some detail on the costs collectively on some of those, since there's a possibility that selectively 1 or 2 or 3 of those might go to the townships and others will stay within the board or within the region. Could this report that you're looking at in the next few weeks include any details on those items? And if that's not useful, just tell me to turn off the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. And no, this is why we have you here. We want to hear inputs. So absolutely, those are good things to note. Councillor Foxton, I know that you worked on some wording. Do you have your motion that you want to bring forward? / did you want to make any changes based off of other things that have been said?
Julie, did you get the time frame that Councillor Shantz wanted? Thank you.
I think she's just adding that now. So Councillor Foxton's going to be moving this. Is there a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Councillor Shantz. I know that we're, oh, yes, sorry, we can go over to Commissioner Steffler.
What fiscal period are we talking about? Are you talking about the most recent year end? Do you want to see multiple years, current year? I'd probably recommend you probably want to see the last fiscal year completed, which we're in the process of auditing, but
I believe 3 years is being identified.
3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that'll be posted up in just a moment on the screen here for everyone to see. Does anybody have comments or questions on the motion before us? The next library meeting technically was supposed to be April 1st, but with our new committee members, there's been some conflict, so it's still being finalized on timing, but April time, yes. Yes, Chair Redmond.
Whenever that date is, it'd probably be very helpful for our community members if we receive it by email in advance so we can read it through, and if they have questions of clarification just on the process, they can ask.
Audits are going to be done.
Yes, I think that's a fair point. Yes.
Just a thought, complete cost, maybe cost then revenue. I don't know if that's important, if there's the other side of it.
Any other comments or questions at this time on the motion? Seeing none. Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you. I would note, and maybe what we can do is circulate for the new members the annual budgets, because all of the costs and all the expenses and revenues for the library operations are cataloged in the annual budget, which was improved in December and is improved annually. I would just maybe ask my colleague, Commissioner Steffler, when the audits are proposed to be completed, because that really affects the timing. Like if we wanted to deal with audited financial statements as opposed to the estimates in the budget, then really we need to have that information in hand prior to writing the reports. And then, so I guess that really affects the timing of when these reports come forward to council. And I think one of the reasons we worked out the schedule here as presented was that we felt that we could accommodate all of the necessary information gathering processes, including the audits and in the reporting process, and why we wanted to come forward with an interim report and then a final report to give the committee a couple of chances to have a discussion about the information that you're receiving and whether there were gaps or additional information that you wanted to have available for the process.
Commissioner Steffler.
Yeah, so for 2024, if you wanted it prior to us completing our audit, then that information would be noted as preliminary. It wouldn't be the final numbers. So if you want the 2024 to be based on the final audited figures, we'd have to complete our audit.
And do we have a timeline for the 2024 audit?
So the timeline is, off the top of my head, I think we come in April with a draft, but I don't think that's the final one. I'd have to look at the schedule, but it's in that April to June area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Foxton?
I just wanted to remind everybody that finding out the finances is the first part. The second part is where we do the analysis, and our CAOs do the analysis of the feasibility of how it will work and how the transition will take place.
Councillor Shantz?
Yeah, I'd like to see the 2024 numbers and just note that they're not audited, and we can I mean, if there's major changes after the audit, we can deal with that later as part of the analysis.
Councillor Foxton, you weren't kidding that you were chatty today.
Yes. Sorry, Joe, you can get in here anytime you want to step in between the girls. But Sandy, you did ask for a 3-year, right? So the year 1 and 2 will be audited. And then just 24 won't be. Thank you.
Correct. Okay, if we could get the motion back up on the screen, just so everybody knows what they're voting on. Are there any other final comments or questions? Okay, I'm being informed by the clerk that we'll need to waive notice first to allow this motion to come forward. So, Councillor Foxton, are you willing to move that? Councillor Shantz, are you willing to second that? I will ask all those in favor. That is carried. And then we have the motion now before us. It's been moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Shantz. It is up on the screen, just for your reference if you want to make sure it includes all that you're anticipating. But I think we've had ample discussion, so I will call the vote then. All those in favor? And that is carried. Sorry, Joe, I just missed. Were you voting in favor? Yes, okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. Then we will move along, as the rest of that report was just received for information. So we will move on to our next report, which is the library update, which is 4.2. And I will call on Christina McLaren to introduce this report.
Okay. First topic within that report. The report is just an update of activities happening at the library presently and over the last little while. So the first item is that the library was approved to carry over unspent equity, diversity, and inclusiveness funding from 2024 to the 2025 budget. There's just over $78,000 remaining in this fund. Library management team has created a plan for spending funds across 4 areas: collections, programs, staff training, and creating welcoming spaces. Staff are already in the planning stages for work in each of these areas. We've been reaching out to collection vendors, planning programs with partner groups and looking into potential speakers, looking at training opportunities for developing staff teams, and further developing a culture of belonging that fosters welcoming spaces across all library locations within our system. The next item in the update report, the library launched a new library app on January the 27th. It is called RWL to Go. It's a free download from the Google or Apple Store on all smartphone or tablet devices. Once you log in with your library barcode and PIN, the app simplifies placing holds, renewing checkouts if there are no other holds by other patrons, updating account information, and it also has a combined interface with Libby for viewing ebooks and digital magazines and listening to e-audiobooks. So I invite you all to take a look at that. The Library Service Review survey results. This is just a preliminary overview of those results. With support from the region, the library conducted an online community engagement survey in November and December of 2024. Resident experience strategy and communications members have shared the results with library management, and we have an overview of those results for you today. We will be drafting the library service plan based on these results, specifically looking at any trends or patterns that have emerged from the feedback. We'll also be looking at gaps in service and seeking opportunities for where enhancements to library service may be made. Engagement through this survey was very high. We had more than 770 public survey responses, 175 youth survey responses, and about 78% of the library staff participated in a survey and focus group. Overall, people responded they are happy with library services. 89% of survey respondents agree or strongly agree that overall they are satisfied with the library services. And 89% of youth survey respondents indicated that they feel happy or very happy when they visit the library. Overall, the feedback has praised access to our collections through the library branches, our staff and the interactions that people have with our staff members, and library programming. Areas where opportunities for improvement exist include programming, so changes to timing, quantity of programs and locations, more materials. People want to see the quantity of popular titles, ebook availability, and then specific requests about titles and content. And then hours of operation. People are asking to see longer hours, consistent evenings, and weekend hours. That feedback in particular will help to focus where our additional open hours will go starting in July of 2025. Prior to the survey, we have predetermined a need for hours at Elmira, New Hamburg, Wellesley, St. Clements, and Clyde based on user traffic and pre-pandemic access levels, but the survey will help to assist with either confirming or adjusting those hours as we get a little closer to July. The results, I will note, do indicate a gap between e-newsletter subscriptions. 23% of the respondents to the survey said that they subscribe to the newsletter, and those who wish to receive information through an e-newsletter are 48%. So we're looking at ways to reduce that gap. These are just the highlights of that survey. We will have a formal presentation for you at an upcoming library committee meeting. And lastly, Library Committee citizen appointee members who are with us today, both in person and online. I will be reaching out to Library Committee members soon to arrange library board training for members in each township. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Again, this report's just for information, but are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, just a small correction. On the bullet list on page 7 that mentions in-person conversations in Elmira and Wellesley, that happened in North Dumfries also. I was one of the people that they came and spent about an hour with. Okay.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, like I said, this is just for information. And then we do also have our committee tracking list. Are there any questions for that? I'm seeing furrowed brows, but I don't know if that's a question. Councillor Shantz.
I'm not sure if it's a question either. Let me look at the tracking list. I guess my question was about the audit we asked for and what's happening with that.
So that's an other business. There's a motion that's going to be brought up about that. Okay. Any other questions on the information on the tracking list? Okay, seeing none. So under other business, the clerks the clerks do have a motion that I believe Chair Redmond is bringing forward. So I will turn it over to the chair.
Thank you, Chair Salonen. This is a motion that came out of discussions that have happened both at the Library Committee and outside of the Library Committee. So we'd like to formalize that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo directs staff to work with the external auditor to look into former shared position and relationship between the Region of Waterloo Library and Smart Waterloo Region Innovation Lab, and that any costs will be funded through the library budget.
Very good. So that's been moved by Chair Redmond. Is there a seconder to get this motion on the floor? Seconded by Councillor Nowak. And I will open it up to discussion. Councillor Foxton.
So I'm not sure we agreed that the library would fund the audit. The reason that it's being done is because of some perceived discrepancies. And I'm not sure whether we should pay it all or it should be 50-50, or I'd ask my colleagues what their thoughts are.
Anyone have comments on that? I guess my question is, do we know roughly what the cost of an external audit will be? I will go to Commissioner Steffler for that.
So through the chair, so I had a discussion with the KPMG forensic unit. We have a local one in the Waterloo region, and this will depend on the scope. So what I would ask is we'd have to get clarification on what is wished with the element of the relation, and review the relationship with the library and swirl, because that could be. We just have to understand what is you want to be done there so that they can scope it out and understand the amount of work that they're looking at. What I did talk to them about was specifically reviewing the position that was shared with the library and swirl, to look at that, review that position, review the job description. They'd probably interview the person, look at the transaction specific to that, and they gave me an estimate of $15,000 to $20,000. But they would also bill by the hour, so it would be dependent on the amount of hours.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or comments or an amendment somebody was looking for? Actually, before we get to an amendment that I put our poor clerk.
Sorry, that was my bad. I'm supposed to ask for waiving a notice of motion. Sorry.
That's okay.
I would move that.
Okay, waiving notice of motion moved by Chair Redmond, seconded by Councillor Foxton. All those in favor of waiving notice? That carries unanimously. Now we can get into if people have amendments to make.
Chair Salomon, maybe it's fair to offer an explanation of why we needed to do that to our community members who may not be familiar with it.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So because there was not notice of this motion in advance when the agenda was published, we have to waive notice. Essentially, it's a procedural step, which oddly doesn't happen often, but has now happened twice in your first meeting today. Yes. Really getting thrown into the deep end today, but
so in reality, if I wanted to bring a motion to committee or regional council, I would present the motion in advance of the meeting, distribute it, that would be a part of the agenda, and then we would wait for the next meeting for it to happen. Because we wanted to do this in real time, that's when you have to waive notice of motion, because these are public records and the public hasn't seen this. So this is for clarity to everybody.
Thank you. Okay, back to now the notice of motion that is before us. Councillor Foxton, did you have an amendment then that you wanted to make or no?
I'm still not comfortable with paying the whole cost. I wouldn't mind it shared because we have questions about this. And to what depth do we want to go into in the financial analysis? I'm leaning towards my colleagues and asking them their thoughts.
Councillor Shantz?
It's a little tough one without going down the rabbit hole ourselves and seeing where it leads. I mean, yeah, how do you find what depth you go to in an audit when you don't know what you're going to find in the audit?
Councillor Nowak, sorry.
Yeah, no, it would certainly be helpful to have a more accurate price tag on this. I'm wondering if maybe we could split the cost. I think Councillor Foxton had suggested that. Maybe she could make that amendment to the motion, and I would be supportive of that.
I agree. I think we could split the cost, but also the depth that we want to go to, I think we need to decide on. This was not just the four mayors deciding to do this. We went to legal first. We had an analysis done, and the lawyers came back and said, we need to come to you. And we did. And Natasha went to Chair Redmond and Michael Harris, and they thought an external audit would be appropriate. To what depth, I'm not sure yet, and that's because we only know of possible potential of one issue. We don't know if there's more.
I would maybe suggest, in terms of depth, that we have an estimated quote right now, and perhaps the professionals who do the audit might be able to better advise, but I'll go to Commissioner Steffler.
Yes, through the chair. So like I said, we need to understand what the scope is. So this now sounds like it's more than just looking at this specific shared position. The 20,000 quote was looking at the shared position. So it's going to be more than that. But what I would need is just a more understanding of the scope. And if it's like a full review, then I could take that away. I could meet with the KPMG forensic team and get a range of saying you can get this for this, if that would be helpful. But that's really, where they'd have to try to understand is how, the hours of work, how many hours of work will it take that team to complete what you're wishing to get.
Councillor Shantz?
I think what we're looking for is to look at that shared position. If it goes, and if that leads to deeper things, that's a regional issue, and I think any of those costs should be covered by the region. So I would say we do 7,500 to 10,000, which would be half of the estimate to look at that position. And if they're uncovering things that need to go deeper, that should be covered by the region.
Chair Redmond?
I would just really support naming an upset limit and leaving it at that point so we can move forward with this, because I would think that if we are sharing this at the region, this would have to go back to regional council, lest we put other stumbling blocks in the way. Let's identify an upset limit. Ask Commissioner Steffler to go back and try to get a more accurate estimation, and then at a subsequent meeting, if we feel we need to share the cost because it's ballooning, then we can then take it back to council. But it's not a decision that library council can encumber regional council without regional council expressing themselves on it. So I would suggest let's just do the upset limit of, what did you say, 7,500 or 10,000, up to 10,000, and then we would move forward.
And just on that, Chair Redmond, I believe my understanding is, since regional council is actually the library board, this is going to regional council anyways. So yes, you are right. It does need all of our horseshoe colleagues' input on this. So with that, I believe that the amendment has been added. I would ask, just to keep with formal process, that we vote on adding the amendment formally to the motion. So it's been moved by Councillor Foxton, do you have a question? We could. I would also see that as a decision point at the time when we receive information as well. We could.
Yeah, it's sort of at the $10,000, everything sort of stops. It doesn't talk about a continuance.
Do you maybe want it to be a maximum of $10,000 before coming back to library?
I'm going to bow to Councillor Shantz.
Yes, Councillor Shantz.
So this recommendation is going to regional council. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So then I think I would add in the recommendation that regional council fund the remainder of the cost. And I think that can be our recommendation to regional council.
Okay. So that amendment should be updated there now. Any other comments or questions? Also just noting that we're losing 2 of our colleagues in 5 minutes to other meetings. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so this has been moved by Councillor Foxton. Is there a seconder for the amendment now as written? Seconded by Councillor Shantz. And I will call the vote on that. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And now we will go to the main motion as amended. And any other final questions or comments? Seeing none, although I say, okay, I was about to say Councillor Nowak just disappeared, but.
I'm back.
Very good. All right, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there any other business that anybody else had to bring up today? Okay. Seeing none, our next library committee meeting, as mentioned before, will be held at the start of April. We're just finalizing with all committee members on a date and time, and I would be looking for a mover and seconder to adjourn our meeting. Moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor?